Every time I feel the Spirit moving in my heart, I will pray. Every time I feel the Spirit moving in my heart, I will pray. Up on the mountain, my God spoke. Out of his mouth came fire and smoke. My God spoke now, spoke so well. Talked about the fire when I burn in hell. Sing it with me. Every time I feel the Spirit moving in my heart, I will pray. Every time I feel the Spirit moving in my heart, I will pray. One more time, come on. Every time I feel the Spirit moving in my heart, I will pray. Every time I feel the Spirit moving in my heart, I will pray.
Wasn't that a rousing way to start a show?
Yes.
Was that in fact? Yes. And it was provided by Donald Leace, who's a regular on this show, and by the show Chorale, which we've just activated this week. It's really a kind of a special time for you to be joining us. About 28 people in the chorale I don't know all the names of, so they'll have to go fairly anonymous through the next hour. But I do know the names of two of them who are singing over there, and their names are Pete Seeger and Oscar Brand. For those who are familiar with the world of guitars, banjos, and folk songs, they need no introduction, so I'm not going to provide one. For those that aren't familiar with that world, watch for the next hour and you'll become a little more familiar with it. This has got to be kind of a free-form thing. I know that neither of you like to work in a rigid structure. What would you like to do, Pete?
Can we sing anything we want?
You certainly may.
Well, you know, I always liked, when I was younger than some of you are here, I got interested in old-time music, partly because the words were about all life. In those days, pop music was mostly June, Moon, Croon, Spoon, back in the 1930s, and I was kind of bored with it. And I came across songs about working people, miners and cowboys, and of course some of the words weren't polite, but there wasn't anything really wrong with them, even the impolite ones. There's an old lumberjack up in Canada who taught this song to a friend of mine, and he's dead and gone now, but I'd like to sing his song. An old man come courting me, fall-a-la-la-doodle. An old man come courting me, high-derry-down. An old man come courting me, all for to marry me. Maids, when you're young, never wed an old man. He has no falloodle, fa-la-la-la-doodle. He has no falloodle, the divil a one. He has no falloodle, he's lost his ding-doodle. It's maids, when you're young, never wed an old man. It's first that we went to church, fall-a-la-la-doodle. When that we went to church, high-derry-down. It's when that we went to church, he left me in the lurch. Maids, when you're young, never wed an old man. It's when we were walking home, fall-a-la-la-doodle. It's when we were walking home, high-derry-down. It's when we were walking home, he let me walk alone. Maids, when you're young, never wed an old man. It's when I had supper set, fall-a-la-la-doodle. It's when I had supper set, high-derry-down. It's when I had supper set, divil a bite he could et. Maids, when you're young, never wed an old man. But he had no falloodle, fa-la-la-la-doodle. He had no falloodle, the divil a one. He had no falloodle, he'd lost his ding-doodle. It's maids, when you're young, never wed an old man. Well, you get the idea. These songs, there's nothing.
Unlike Pete, who came to folk music when he left college, I've been singing, like many of you, since I was 4 or 5 years old. And consequently, the songs I've learned have stuck with me all these years to a tremendous degree that sometimes you can't get rid of them. They hang on. But when I first came to the United States from Canada, I'm from Winnipeg, I came through Rouse's Point, which is the crossing on the border. And there they have hundreds of these lumberjack songs, including a wilder version of that than O.J. Abbott sings. But
you know a few of those, don't you, Oscar?
yeah, I know a few, like everybody else does. The only thing is, until recently, the American culture was so hidebound and tight-mouthed that you weren't allowed to believe that any of these things existed. You yourself knew they existed, but nobody allowed you to repeat them. In other words, they were afraid that the mass media, for instance, would convey to you the songs you already knew, which is a very bad idea. Now, for instance, I want to give you... There's a fellow named Hugh Perkins, whom I met coming down from Canada the first time, and he taught me the whole version of a song which most people only know in part. And the whole version, I think, is much more beautiful, much more poignant, and a little less available for the multimedia than the others, but I think if you want to sing with me, I'll give you the lines as we go ahead. It's, well, I was a bachelor and I lived all alone and worked at the weaver's trade. The only thing I ever did that was wrong. The only thing I ever did that was wrong was woo a fair young maid. Was woo a fair young maid. I wooed her in the summertime and part of the winter, too. I wooed her in the summertime, part of the winter, too. The only thing I ever did that was wrong, only thing I ever did that was wrong was shield her from the foggy dew, was shield her from the foggy, foggy dew. One night she came close by my bed. Try that. One night she came close by my bed when I was fast asleep. When I was fast asleep, she threw her arms about my head. She threw her arms about my head. Then she commenced to weep. And then she commenced to weep. She wept, she cried, she darn near died. She wept, she cried, she darn near died. What was I to do? So what was I to do? Come to my bed, my pretty girl, I said. Come to my bed, my pretty girl, I said. I'll shield you from the foggy, foggy dew. Towards the beginning of the year, she grew paler in her face, and towards the ending of the year, she grew rounder in her waist. I never said one harsh word to her that I'd never do, but every time the baby cried, I cursed the foggy, foggy dew. Now I am a bachelor, I live with my son. Now I am a bachelor, I live with my son. We work at the weaver's trade. Work at the weaver's trade. Every time I look into his eyes. Every time I look into his eyes. Reminds me of a fair young maid. Reminds me of a fair young maid. Reminds me of the summertime and part of the winter too. Reminds me of the summertime, part of the winter too. And the many, many times I held her in my arms. The many, many times I held her in my arms, just to shield her, just to shield her from the foggy, foggy dew.
The good thing about so many of these old songs is they were made up for people to sing together when families sat around. At least a big majority of them. I grant you, sailor songs, soldier songs, even a lot of lumberjack songs. But the big majority of old folk songs are made for families to pass on. And the best fun I've had is when I can feel that I'm singing to a cross-section of the whole population. And the kids like some of the older songs, and the grown-ups like some of the kids' songs. Go tell Aunt Rhody, go tell old gray goose is dead. Keep the chords going. I'll get some picks on my hands. Where is it? The one she's been saving. The one she's been saving. The one she's been saving. One she's been saving. To make a feather bed, make a feather bed. Old Gander's weeping, old Gander's weeping. Sing it pretty. Old Gander's weeping. I don't hear you. Old Gander's weeping. 'Cause his wife is dead. 'Cause his wife is dead. The goslings are mourning. The goslings are mourning. The goslings are mourning. The goslings are mourning because their mother's dead. She died in the mill pond. Died in the mill pond. Died in the mill pond. She died in the mill. Standing on her head. Standing on her head. Go tell Aunt Rhody. Go tell Aunt Rhody. Go tell Aunt Rhody. Go tell Aunt Rhody. The old gray goose is dead. I don't know who wrote this song, but I'm willing to bet this is an old one. The earliest printed form of it is in France. Jean-Jacques Rousseau, the philosopher, put the tune in one of his musical operas. But I bet he got the tune from the countryside. Maybe it was known by people 1,000 years ago. Who knows? 2,000 years ago. Why stop there? 10,000 years ago. If it hadn't been for this long chain of people, we wouldn't know it. Somebody had to pass it on. Whoever you out there, pass it on to your own kids. Don't just leave it up to teach your kids by letting them switch on the TV, switch on a loudspeaker of some sort. Sing them a song yourself. Then you can add verses that no one ever heard before. Make up new verses to it. One more chorus. Go tell Aunt Rhody. Go tell Aunt Rhody. Go tell Aunt Rhody that the old gray goose is dead.
You know, Pete, I was just thinking that particular process is not only common to the people who just sing for their own enjoyment, but there's one example, for instance, of the way the popular song form comes right out of the folk song. It twists and it turns and it changes because of the differing needs of you, for instance, as compared to the needs of your fathers and your mothers, though they object to it a lot. I was thinking of The Old Man Who Loved the Cow. You remember the song I'm talking about? Sing it. All right. Well, in Canada, there's a Newfoundland song about a cow whose name is Drinnan. Well, Drinnan is Gaelic for cow. It's, let's see. Oh, Drinnan down, why did you die? Oh, Drinnan down, why did you die? Your back was so black, your tail so long, and my Drinnan down, Derry, she ne'er will come home. Oh, Drinnan down lived before she were dead, and she gave me sweet butter to put on my bread, likewise good milk to stiffen my crown, but now it's black water, for Drinnan down's gone. Now, I'm sure that song, which is a very sad song, does not sound to you like anything you've been singing within the last 20 years. However, there was a modern version of it, a more lachrymose, American-Irish kind of version that went, "'Tis a mournful sad ditty, I'll tell you somehow, about an old man, and he had but one cow. He sent his old cow to the fields to be fed, and the word come to him that his drinnin' was dead. And he said, oh, Aramusha, sweeter than thou. When the old man discovered his cow, it was dead. Over hedges and fields and ditches he fled, over hedges and ditches and fields that were plowed. And he never said, till he seen his poor cow. And he said, oh, Aramusha, sweeter than thou. He said, I'd rather lose Patsy, my only firstborn, than to lose you, my drinnin'. But now you are gone. And so I will sit down and I'll eat my dry bread, and there'll be no more butter, for drinnin' is dead. Oh, Aramusha, sweeter than thou. Does that sound like anything? You tell the rest of the story if you feel.
Oh, well. Some of you may recognize that chorus. Oh, kisses sweeter than wine. Because a friend of Oscar's and mine back 20 years ago was the great, really one of the greatest musicians America ever knew. A man named Hughie Ledbetter from Louisiana. A really great black singer of songs old and new. And he liked this, but he put some rhythm to it. He had to play it in his own way. He learned it from the same person that Oscar and I learned it from, who was an Irishman in New York. And by the time he added the rhythm, it was a new song. And then Lee Hayes and others came along and put some new words to it. Play the chords for me.
I don't think I can play the way you play it. I'd rather...
No, it has to go fast.
Yeah. See the difference?
No, I'm in the wrong key. Wrong key.
Did you
remember?
Yeah. Oh, kisses sweeter than wine.
Our children numbered just about 4. They all had sweethearts a-knocking at the door. They all got married, they didn't hesitate. I was, oh Lord, the grandfather of 8. Oh, kisses sweeter than wine. They don't agree with the philosophy, maybe. Oh, kisses sweeter than wine. Hey, you know, really, this is the most subversive song I know.
Why is that?
It is. Haven't you been reading the newspapers recently? He's talking about 4 children, 8 grandchildren.
Oh.
We'll all be a doubling, a doubling, a doubling. We'll all be a doubling in 32 years. 2 times 2 is 4. 2 times 4 is 8. 2 times 8 is 16. And the hour is getting late. We'll all be a doubling, a doubling, a doubling. We'll all be a doubling in 32 years. Help me out in that chorus and we'll sing her up. Next comes, wait a minute, just 16 is 32. Next comes 64. Next comes 128. Now, do we need to hear more? We'll all be a doubling, a doubling, a doubling. We'll all be a doubling in 32 years. All be a doubling, a doubling, a doubling. We'll all be a doubling in 32 years. Next comes 256. Next 512. Next 1,024. Figure it out yourself. We'll all be a doubling, a doubling, a doubling. We'll all be a doubling in 32 years. We'll all be a doubling, a doubling, a doubling. We'll all be a doubling in 32 years. Keep on going 9 generations, you can have children more than 1 million. Keep on going another 18, your children are more than 1 trillion. We'll all be a doubling, a doubling, a doubling. We'll all be a doubling in 32 years. We'll all be a doubling, a doubling, a doubling. We'll all be a doubling in 32 years. Either people will have to get smaller, or the world's going to have to get bigger. Well, there's a couple other possibilities. I'll leave it to you to figure. We'll all be a doubling, a doubling, a doubling. We'll all be a doubling in 32 years. We'll all be a doubling, a doubling, a doubling. We'll all be a doubling in 32 years. Well, this is kind of a zipper song. I made up a verse just for myself, but you could make verses for yourself if you wanted.
Not now.
I know I shouldn't have been born. I was my mama's 3rd child. But now I'm hollering around the world, and I drive some people wild. We'll all be a doubling, a doubling, a doubling. We'll all be a doubling in 32 years. I'll be a doubling, a doubling, a doubling. We'll all be a doubling in 32 years. I'm serious. I got involved in this business. I read Paul Ehrlich's book, The Population Bomb.
Explain.
Read it?
Yeah, well, I have a big problem. I like children.
I do too. I think I love big families. I want to have 12 children when my wife and I got married, but she had something to say about it.
Yeah, it's kind of
what
unfair
about other
to say.
people here?
What?
Have you read?
Oh, yeah.
Have you read that book?
Has anybody read The Population
Somebody
Bomb?
here has. Yeah.
I started it. I didn't finish all of it, but
Why didn't you finish?
Well, I'm still in the process, mainly. That's why, because I've got about...
You're still in the process of reading it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd like to comment on something. I think Pete Seeger said that he loved... No, it wasn't Pete Seeger. Okay, someone said that they love children. And that's all the more reason, probably, to control the population, because if you love them, you don't want to bring them into a world where they're going to wonder where they get their next meal, or going to wonder if they can breathe.
The biggest problem now is going to be trying to convince everyone that it's, just absolutely immoral to have more than 2 children. And I don't know. It seems like all the religious institutions certainly are against it, and against this attitude that it is immoral to stop breeding after you get to 2. And I don't know what's to be done unless you can get that through.
Not only most churches, not only a lot of churches can't get used to the idea, but there are people all around the world that they're kind of the basic idea of is have the biggest family you can, and especially in parts of the world like Latin America, where people are very broke, and when somebody from USA comes down and said, you should not have such big families, they're mad. Down in Brazil, the Brazilian Medical Association came out with a blast at the USA. It says, USA is flooding our country with birth control information. This is nothing but Yankee imperialism. They want to keep Brazil small.
Well, it's not a very easy thing to say to a poor man who almost trades and needs his children, either on a small farm or like some of the grape growers who travel and they need the children to help out, that he shouldn't have any.
He needs that child labor.
Yeah, the problem is with a system that requires and expects children, where you use them for barter in the first place. That's in many Latin American countries, of course, European and Asiatic countries. You want boy children, especially because they're very, very helpful, and some girl children for trading purposes.
Let me ask you, is there anybody here who thinks that population control is something that the world does not need to worry about? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we're assuming that everybody agrees with us.
Pete, a while back, we talked about this on one show, and the consensus there was that it's a good thing, and it has to be done in the world, but that individuals who were sitting here felt that it was their choice to have 1, 2, or 9 kids, that they didn't want their individual liberty abridged. Do other people feel that way, or are you convinced that, Don, over there?
I feel that the population has to be curbed in some way, because I've heard things that, like a lot of the problems today with people not being sensitive to other people's needs, and with the problems of pollution and communication is caused by overpopulation, and that if America could get together and live more like a family where everybody would know what was going on, we'd be able to understand each other a lot better.
Well, it's just pretty hard to conceive to an individual that if he has 4 kids and can afford to bring them up, that there's anything wrong with doing so. But when you consider the thousands and millions of individuals who feel that way, they're multiplying the population by 4. It's kind of ridiculous.
Yes. In the population bomb, like that Dr. Paul Ehrlich mentions, he says, there's only 3 alternatives left for us. And the first, like he mentions, is birth control. And he says, if we don't act now on this, then perhaps the next 10 years, this won't be one of the alternatives. And the other 2 that he mentions is pestilence and war. And so,
those are the old ways that was handled.
Yes.
Malthusian.
And it will be handled unless we handle it some other way. That's what
the trouble is, of course, if you do have too much population, you'll end up with some kind of explosive situation on every border in the world.
You mentioned before that you would be taking away someone else's right, or someone would feel you'd be taking away their right by telling them that they couldn't have children. But you'd be infringing on someone else's right, because with you having 9 children, when these children grow up, if everyone had 9 children, then you're condemning these children to starvation and pestilence, just like the man's.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head here, that this is why Ehrlich's book turned my head around, was that he was the first population man who said that everybody's going to have to limit their family, not just poor people. You see, up till then, for hundreds of years or more, ever since Malthus, rich people said, oh, these ignorant poor have got to stop multiplying like rabbit. But it's all right for me to have 12 children. But Ehrlich says if the problem is going to be solved, if it's going to be solved at all, it's going to, because everybody, rich and poor, realizes it's their responsibility. And he says, actually, you can't blame India for the present environmental crisis. India added some 30 million new people to the world last year, but those 30 million people are going to grow up to use a little rice and burn a little charcoal, and they'll die much younger. 6 million extra citizens of the USA will grow up to burn 1,000 gallons of gasoline every year, pesticides, herbicides, and the oxygen imbalance in our atmosphere today is largely caused by USA and a few other industrialized nations.
Yeah, that sounds funny.
Well, I'd like to present another point. Well, like, if this, everybody realizes that this is such a problem, why are we having such a problem getting safe methods of birth control, and why can't we have abortion? I think it's a woman's right to be able to determine, especially with this problem of population.
I think myself is because TV hasn't been used right as a means of communication. There are a lot of changes that the world is going to have to undergo. Some of them, whether we like it or not, the inventors have invented new ways to keep people alive, and now we've got to make new changes in the way we live. And TV is not, in my opinion, being used right. All around the world, it's in some kind of a straitjacket or other. I'd like to see TV opened up everywhere to every imaginable kind of opinion. And if somebody doesn't like it, the best sensor in the world is that little knob. Maybe they've turned us off already. Go ahead, if you don't like us, turn us off. Click, 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 all over the country. Sets are going off, they're turning on the Ed Sullivan Show or something else exciting, and you can get your opiate some other way. Turn us off. Now we're alone, we can say anything we want.
Well, there's something else, too. I think that it's a much broader question. It's a question that our society has stated that if you don't have a family, if you're not a working man with a good family, a nice big one, then you're not a success in our society, and that's the whole problem. I was watching a program this morning, I believe it was Margaret Mead, stated that it should be the single people and the people married with only one child or perhaps no children that should be idolized in our society because they're the people who are going to save it.
The problem that we face, of course, is who governs what goes on TV and who fights to prevent what goes on from staying on. You know that a major entrenched part of American life and life of the world is the church, which requires more and more converts, or if it's not that kind of a proselytizing church, requires a continuous and large group of people. In Holland, for instance, where much of the fight is going on, the Catholic Church became extremely strong as a result of population growth. Now, why would any church which believes that it's right want to lose power? Power is people in most countries. Why would they want to lose power? They would have to fight like the Dickens against anybody from their church acceding to having less children. And you must realize, you must know, I'm sure, how powerful these elements are in our society, where in New York State, when a man from Auburn, New York, which has a heavily Catholic population, said he would vote for abortion, he wept because he said he knew this would take him right out of office like that. And the next vote that they had was on aid to parochial schools, which happens to be directly against the franchise of the Constitution. But they're all voting for aid to parochial schools in the hope that everybody will forget they voted for abortion. Mm-hmm. And so if you're being very short-sighted, if you expect that the television networks or anybody else is going to give you time to speak for what they don't want.
Unless somebody thinks they've suddenly turned in an anti-Catholic program, let's say, I'm just a boy just landed from the town of Ballyfad. I want a situation, yes, and want it very bad. I seen employment advertised as just the things as I, but the dirty spell being ended with no Irish need apply. Woof, says I, but that's an insult, to get the job I'll try. So I went to see the blackguard with his no Irish need apply. Some do think it a misfortune to be christened Pat or Dan. but to me it is an honor to be born an Irishman. Because it's not just Catholics, but all kinds of minority peoples who are struggling for the rights, who feel that the battle of the cradle is the only way they're going to win.
Well, it's, you know, when you say that a man who is Catholic or is a strict Catholic practicing the tenets of the church once is against abortion, that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with him just because you like abortion. Bridges wept because the Senator Bridges wept because he said the people who had voted for abortion were murderers. He believed that the cutting of a life at whatever stage within the parent is a deadly business, a murderous business. This is what is believed by many people, and as a consequence, you cannot, I'm not saying, that's not an anti-Catholic statement, it's merely a statement of fact, which I'm sure everybody agrees.
Hey, Donnie,
by the way, I think he was from North Ireland.
You didn't holler.
This is just sort of, this is sort of a little off the subject in a sense, but I remember when I was in high school, going to Town Hall in Philadelphia and seeing you in concert, Pete, and coming away with a really, one of the most moving feelings of camaraderie and just feeling like one with everybody in Town Hall. It was a huge place. Yet still, I was really puzzled because I could never really understand why some people had been against my going and friends of mine going to a concert of yours because you were classified as subversive, you know. And I listened to what you sang about. And the things that you were saying about were people getting along with each other, people investigating themselves and maybe finding the things that were wrong and sort of turning them into things that were right. And I could find nothing subversive in this. Now, you've probably been, I mean, this is like in 1957. Now, you've been doing, you know, probably things like that for some time. Now, you've seen changes, but I'd like to, you know, why was it that you were kept off of television for such a long time? Why was it that you've not been exposed more to the public?
Ever since Woody Guthrie and I were singing together in the 1930s, I just assumed that because I sang controversial songs, I wouldn't get on the radio, or later on it was TV. And I just figured, well, the big bosses owned the newspapers, they owned the radio stations, and I gave up the idea of trying to get on them. You know, Woody Guthrie wrote This Land Is Your Land in 1939, but it wasn't until 1960 that it gradually became well known. It was never a hit record. They didn't play his records. Woody and I could not get a job on radio. And I don't feel bitter about it myself, not one bit. I'm a very lucky guy. I was able to get a good education, and I've always been able to make a living. But now I'm just mad. I go around in a 24-hour-a-day rage. The fact that the American people do not have right to express their opinions on this magical invention we call TV. Everything seems boiled down. It's in a commercial straitjacket. And I think everybody deserves a right to it. The air belongs to everyone. It belongs to the right and the left. I think every week, if there are 336 half hours in every week, there ought to be time in every big city for everybody from the Ku Klux Klan and the John Birch Society to the Black Panthers and the Communist Party have a little time on the air. They don't need to hog the time, but everybody ought to have a whiff of time, even the nudists.
You know, Pete, I agree with, I'm sorry.
I think most of the problem there is just that the media disperses the idea that you're diversified at all. They think that there is one American, and, you know, that's it. Everyone is the same, and public opinion molds you so that there can only be one view on television, and they don't feel that they're shutting out anyone. This is just the way everyone's supposed to think.
I disagree. I think that the major networks, not necessarily the local channels, but the major networks as a whole have gradually been leaning more and more to the left, and I've been rather amazed by it.
Could I add something to that?
I don't think that is that there's only one American. They're just afraid to find out, afraid to let everybody see that there is more than one American, because they like to have this view that America is a sound nation. Everything is, you know, all right, and because there's only one type of American, we try to make you this way, referring to the established people who run the networks. But if they would open up television, it would lead to their destruction, the people who run the thing. So they want to
singing real good. Some people know, just like this. Preserving their security by keeping their mouth closed. That damn fools. There's no security this day keeping your mouth closed. No security anywhere in the whole bloomin' world. Everybody gotta speak up. Con los pobres de la tierra. This says, with the poor people of the earth, I want to cast my lot. Con los pobres de la tierra, quiero yo mi suerte echar. Con los pobres de la tierra, quiero yo mi suerte echar. El arroyo de la sierra me complace más que el mar. Guantanamera, ja, ja, Bahera Guantanamera. Guantanamera, Bahera Guantanamera. Repitado, Guantanamera, Bahera Guantanamera.
You know, I found for years that the way to reach people who don't agree with you, as Pete's pointing out, is through song, and that's one of the reasons I love song. I'd rather sing than talk. I'd rather sing than eat sometimes, and sometimes that's what exactly happens. But I was asked to write religious songs for very religious people in America. I'm on a grant. I'm going to perform a number of these songs down in Houston, Texas. I don't know if you know about Houston, but it's a rough place right now. It has been for many, many years, but now they're discovering it's rough, which is great. And I wrote a couple of songs. Now, I want you to think of what's happening. I'm singing this in Houston, Texas, where within the last 5 months, 10 black people were shot escaping from some criminal offense. And the chorus, if you'll join in with me, is, who knows the color of God, black or white or yellow or red, all or any or none of the above? Who knows the color of God, knows the color of love. Mary, Mary, sitting in the window, looking up at a lowering cloud, wondering, wondering, what will he look like? Whatever he looks like, Mary, you'll be proud. For who knows the color of God, black or white or yellow or red, all or any or none of the above? Who knows the color of God, knows the color of love. Joseph, Joseph, walking in the garden, looking down at the slumbering earth, wondering, wondering, what will he look like? Whatever he looks like, prophets told his birth. For who knows the color of God, black or white or yellow or red, all or any or none of the above? Who knows the color of God, knows the color of love. Jesus, Jesus, walking on the mountain, looking down from the towering brim, seeing the black men, white men and brown men, all children of God, and each the image of him. For who knows the color of God, black or white or yellow or red, all or any or none of the above? Who knows the color of God, knows the color of love. I hope that people who are religious, and many of our best bigots are religious people, will listen to the song, square it with their own recollections of the Bible, and possibly discover there's some truth in the possibility that men really are brothers, and not the kind of brothers that you beat up on every day. Real.
You said at the beginning, though, something about people being arrested for committing a crime. Do you know the song by Matt Jones? When one man's got $1 million and another ain't got a dime, that's when law and order is another name for crime. That's one simple fact of life that must be understood. The rich are rich because the poor are poor, and brother, that ain't good. My wife and I knew some people who were going on a fast last week because they wanted to just express their feeling about the hunger in the world, and it was kind of a protest. But my wife said, "No, it's just a protest. See if you couldn't. What would happen if you tried living for a whole week or a whole month on the amount of food that you'd get if all the food in the world were divided up equally? Everybody says it's great to share. Well, let's try sharing. Wow, you know, we found if all the food in the world were divided equally, we'd be undernourished. You get enough calories, just enough calories, you wouldn't get fat, but there'd be a real protein shortage. That vast areas of the world get so little meat that we wouldn't think that, in fact, they don't. They grow up with protein deficiencies and things like that. We call it the human race diet. She's busy drawing up a plan for it.
You know, it's hard for anybody who hasn't not only been poor, but real hungry, to know what it's like. It's almost impossible. It really is. I was a member of the board that created Sesame Street, and there were a lot of people on that board, some who were working with poor kids, some who were not. And you'd be surprised at the difference in texture of the way the people talked. I wanted to talk about using breadcrumbs or some of the diet things in the little bit of meat you might get to make it look like a lot. And they wanted to talk about, well, about intellectual development and all kinds of learning problems and cognitive skills. I wanted them, and by the way, we did get a lot of what we wanted. I don't,
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Yeah, that was a good idea.
That's the greatest little tune I've heard in years.
And sponsored by
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
But the point is, trying to get people to know what it's like to be poor is, I think, one of the real first steps in getting them to realize how wrong it is to have poor.
There was a time where people, all they did was try to survive. I mean, the pioneers, when they first came over, they didn't go out, with the idea of trying to make money every day. As people of America are today, everything's built up on our monetary system and our ideas of capitalism. There was a time where you just went out and you plowed the field and you grew your crops and all, and what you grew, that was what you lived off of. And it seems as our economy and everything in our country has grown, we've gotten away from that, and we're on a monetary system, and we've seemed to have forgotten about, how hard it is really to survive. You're always quick to make a buck, but Earth Day is coming up this week, and I think it would be a good time for all of us to remember that if we don't start thinking about it soon, we're going to have problems surviving with the way we're using up our air and our land and our water, and not really caring about how we use it.
Earth Day should be, when you say this, I know we'll be on the air sometime after the first Earth Day, but the sponsors of Earth Day want it every week, every single solitary week, and every day, to make us remember. Today, I hope, wherever we air in whatever city, everybody knows that today is Earth Day, a time not only to be frightened, but to dedicate ourselves to an absolute need for our personal selves. We, not to read in the papers what other people are doing, but to discover a way to do something personally every minute and every day to make the world better each chance we get. I mean, that's Earth Day. That's today. That's now. That's what I know Pete does a lot of the time. I won't tell you what I do most of the time because I'd give my secret away, but I know a lot of the people I know are directly involved in making this a better world, instead of sitting in our cans and wondering how somebody's going to improve it. It's a rough business.
When you said about somebody improving it, I think that brings up a very good point about Earth Day, because I was reading this article and they were talking about automobiles and how they cause pollution. The people were getting all up in arms, about pollution, you better stop it. And they were saying, well, the gasoline companies better refine their gasoline and put things on the cars, but ask them to give up their cars to stop pollution. But no, it's not that. It's the people should refine them. You can't give up things. The other people should improve it for you. And I think, wow, that's a terrible attitude.
Well, it's not even giving up things so much, but people aren't even willing to go to moderate means. They're not willing to buy a little smaller car which doesn't give off at least as much exhaust. I mean, they say that, look at those cars out on the street and how much air pollution they cause, but they're the first ones who are striving to make all the money to buy a Lincoln Continental. So they're causing the problem.
What also gets me, I think this is the way it goes, like General Motors claims, we're developing new ways of stopping pollution. In meantime, they're like in Washington with lobbies saying, what, our cars don't give off any pollution. It's industry. It's other industries, but it's not our cars. And
Of course, it's never your fault. It's always somebody else's fault. I mean, you're not causing pollution. Even like the simplest thing like using colored tissues, you're causing pollution. You can't give up a simple thing as a yellow tissue to
I think you young people you've zeroed in on the key problem now. We're going to have to let everybody know in the world that it's everybody's responsibility. We can't blame the problem on somebody else. We're going to have to solve it ourselves. Some guy once said, we seldom see the handwriting on the wall till our backs are against it. And they really are. We got a few more years to go, this human race, and then it'll be too late to solve it. But if we get together, we can solve it.
One of the great quotations of our time is Pogo's quotation, we have met the enemy and they are us.
Oh, what a beautiful city. Oh, what a beautiful city. Oh, what a beautiful city. 12 gates to the city. Hallelujah. When I get to heaven, gonna sing and shout. There's 12 gates to the city. Hallelujah. Ain't nobody there gonna keep me out. There's 12 gates to the city. Hallelujah. B flat, Donnie. Oh, what a beautiful city. Oh, what a beautiful city. Oh, what a beautiful city. 12 gates to the city. Hallelujah. 3 gates in the east, hello Peking. 3 gates in the west, hello Chicago. 3 gates in the north, hello Stockholm. 3 gates in the south, hello Havana. There's 12 gates to the city. Hallelujah. Let's sing it while Bob's leading out. Oh, what a beautiful city. Oh, what a beautiful city. Oh, what a beautiful city. 12 gates to the city. Hallelujah. Got a verse, Oscar? While everyone sing, we're just going to split. I'd like to thank Pete Seeger and Oscar Brand and all these people for being with us, and we'll see you next week.
12 gates to the city. Hallelujah. It must be the children Moses led. 12 gates to the city. Hallelujah. Sing it now. Now you know it, did you sing it? Oh, what a beautiful city. Oh, what a beautiful city.
Next week, we'll be joined by the only Republican ever elected to the Senate from the state of Tennessee. He's Senator Howard H. Baker.